Hi, my name's Jim Cameron. I'm a local historian from Cranbrook, and this is a Cranbrook History Short. I'm standing here on a beautiful flat table of land overlooking the Kootenay River with the majestic Purcell Mountains behind me. Now, isn't this a perfect place for a town? Well, a little wrong about that. Isn't this a perfect place for a ghost town? You know, that's not quite correct either. I mean, there are more people that come here to Fort Steele Heritage Town in 1 year than ever came to the town back in its heyday 120 years ago. See, what happened was, back in 1863, 4 or 5 miners, prospectors from down in the States, came up from Walla Walla looking for gold. They'd been prospecting down in the States since 1849 when the California gold strike hit, and gradually moving more and more north in the endless search for gold. They followed up the Kootenay River, and they stopped at a little place not far from here where the Wild Horse Creek enters the Kootenay. You know, they had a good look around, and sure enough, there was gold everywhere. Well, you know, word got out very, very quickly, and within weeks, there was thousands of miners came from all over to search for gold on the Wild Horse Creek. Now, the original group, including a fellow by the name of Jack Fisher, for which Fisher Peak is named, they did very well. They made a lot of money. The problem was, and it always was a problem when you were mining for gold, is the first miners did well. Everybody that came later, oh, not so much. In fact, one of the fellows that came shortly afterwards was a gentleman by the name of John Gilbreth. He came and he had a look around. He was originally thinking about looking for gold, but he soon realized that if there was money to be made, it would be made in supplying the prospectors with everything that they needed. So what John did, the first thing he did, was he built a ferry across the Kootenay River. So those gentlemen miners coming up the Walla Walla Trail could cross over and head on up into the Wild Horse on their search for gold. Now, John did really, really well with the ferry at first, and he followed with a general store. He rented out pack trains, and in fact, John came from a large family. There was 9 Gilbreth brothers and sisters, and 5 of them ended up in Fort Steele. In fact, it wasn't even Fort Steele then. It was called, and it remained for a number of years, Gilbreth Ferry. In no time at all, the town of Gilbreth Ferry was a large community, supplying all the miners at the gold rush, and in fact, a number of smaller communities in this area. Sadly, 1864 was a great year for the miners. 1865, the town basically disappeared. Fisherville was nothing but a memory, really, as the miners moved on, carrying up north in that endless search for gold. Fort Steele remained, however, and Fort Steele became a supply community for this entire area, thanks to the Kootenay River in large part. By 1898, Fort Steele was at least 2,000 people, probably more. It was a burgeoning town, and the hope was, the dream was, that the Canadian Pacific Railway was going to choose this spot as their depot. Now, what happened after that is a little open for discussion. Certainly, there's a lot of people that believe that a fellow by the name of James Baker, who was the local member of Parliament for this area, he owned a lot of land on what was called Joseph's Prairie, about 15 miles from here. Now, he sold his share of the land to the CPR. In fact, he gave the CPR half of the land of what would soon become Cranbrook. And there was a lot of people in Fort Steele that thought that as their member of Parliament, he completely sold them out. On the other hand, a gentleman by the name of Miles Beale, who was in fact a real estate agent here with a group called Beale and Elwell, he states that John Gilbreth's brother, Robert Gilbreth, in fact, owned a lot of the land that the CPR bought at Joseph Prairie. And Robert sold it because he was heavily mortgaged on that same land. The argument then remains, was it James Baker that sold out Fort Steele? Was it Robert Gilbreth that lived here that sold out Fort Steele? Whatever the case, the railway bypassed Fort Steele. It went directly to Joseph's Prairie, which by then, in 1898, had been platted as the town of Cranbrook. By the 1920s, Fort Steele was virtually a ghost town and remained that way until 1967, when the BC provincial government reopened it as Fort Steele Heritage Town. And since then, it has been a booming community with thousands of visitors coming yearly to check out the beautiful scenery, the incredible history, and the lovely area we call the East Kootenay. My name's Jim Cameron, and this has been a Cranbrook History Short.